Hi everyone, welcome to Ethernal Realms and welcome to the month ahead astrology reading. Make sure you check your sun, moon, and rising signs for a comprehensive view of the month. Additionally, I would recommend watching the tarot reading of the month ahead to get a different perspective. While you will know the astrology in advance through this session, I will also send you a reminder when the astrological events are near. All you have to do is subscribe, hit the bell, and you will be notified as the events occur through my community page. I occasionally post behind the scenes, meditation guidance, quizzes, and polls, which you can check out for yourself. And it goes without saying that you will be notified when new videos are out, such as other zodiac readings and pick a card tarot readings as well. If you prefer to cut down the guesswork about your month ahead, you can always connect with me via Etsy to get a personalized week-by-week month ahead tarot reading paired with the general astrology. Enough about me, let's talk about you. So let's talk the overview of September. Okay, I'm going to divide this into separate storylines. There are a couple of things happening in parallel, and at some points in time, different things are being activated. So just the general themes going on here. Let's talk about the first one. Is that in the month of September, there are going to be lots of changes on the personal level. And that's because we have Mercury and Venus changing direction. Both of them are going to go direct. And whenever that happens, on especially the personal planets of, the Venus, Mercury, even Mars, we experience lots of shifts in our own mindset and how we go about life. Okay, so on a personal level, lots of changes. But apart from that, we also have Jupiter going retrograde on the same day that Venus goes direct. And that's interesting because it's sort of like both of them are moving in parallel, but they're moving in opposite directions. So they kind of see each other, but they can't really meet at this point. So when Jupiter was active, Venus was not, and now Venus is active, so Jupiter is not. And that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see. But apart from that, we also have Saturn in retrograde, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto in retrograde. So everything is retrograde for like the first few days of the month, and then slowly one by one things start going direct. That is Mercury and Venus. So whenever the bigger planets are retrograde, they're retrograde for a longer time compared to Mercury, let's say. So whatever changes occur on that level, we are more susceptible to absorbing because we don't quite understand it, or it's not yet conscious and it's kind of happening in the background, or this is like involuntary changes that we were not initiating but is introduced through the universe. Okay, so it's sort of a time where the universe is speaking louder than we are able to speak. Okay, so there will be less resistance as a result of this. That's the plus side. We are able to accept the guidance and the intuitive nudges much more easily. And because Mercury, Venus are direct, we're able to kind of incorporate that in a personal level. For example, if you feel like your belief system is not doing you any favors, or that the structures you have in your life are not working in your favor, then there is this opportunity to shift those things. But that initial feeling is going to be the universe speaking. That's the trigger that comes from your soul, from your subconscious, whatever. So yes, there will be changes in beliefs, priorities, and mindsets with Jupiter, Venus, and Mercury changing directions. The next story that's happening is that our focus this month is shifting when the sun is moving from Virgo season into Libra season. So when the sun is in Virgo, there's also a lot of earth activities, earth trines, conjunctions, movements, and so on, right? So there's a lot of earthly matters which are going to happen, and it's going to be a dynamic phase because, again, Mercury is in an earth sign in Virgo, and it changes direction, which changes, again, the flow of things. When the sun moves into Libra, we're going to talk more about relationships and communication, what commitment means or partnership means, and how to find equality and balance and all of that. And this is going to be a more rejuvenating phase because Venus is out of shadow by the time, or at least, it is really, really getting out of shadow almost. So it's going to be, whenever a planet comes out of retrograde phase, basically it is essentially rested and rejuvenated. So it's kind of gaining power through the post-shadow phase, and then it's going to fully glow in its eminence, basically, right? So in Libra season, Venus, the ruler of Libra, is going to come into full strength. So this is going to be rewarding, rejuvenating, not only for relationships, but also financial matters. Another theme to talk about is that there are 6 trines this month. All of them are Earth, which is awesome, which means we have physical blessings, material blessings. And we have 1 conjunction, also Earth, which means there is some emphasis days, which we'll talk about when we get into it. We do have 2 squares, and both of them have Venus involved in it. Okay, so the first one is going to be a direct Venus squaring with Jupiter, who's retrograde. And this is going to be an interesting one because, like I mentioned, going parallel but in opposite direction. And there can be this ideology that we adopt around this time that maybe we and our goals are not able to meet, or our value system, our belief system, they are not able to meet. Okay, so if we move with that assumption, it's not going to do us any favors. It can just seem like we're doing a lot of things but we're going nowhere. That's what it can seem like. But that does not have to be that way. Okay, now keep in mind, Venus in this square is going to be in shadow phase, and that is again indicating that Venus is not yet in full power, so it can't really help Jupiter with much, or it can't really do anything. It can't share the experience as such. It's just going about in its own lane. And Jupiter is in retrograde, so it's kind of in that asleep state, so it's not able to exert itself fully around this time either. So with that, if you mix in the square, the illusion or the assumption that we don't have power, or that we still have a lot of other things to be taken care of before we start moving towards our goals, that can be quite strong. But the plus side is, if we remove that assumption, that initial thing, and just go with things with an open mind, an open heart, and just give it a shot, it's not going to be this way. It is actually quite blissful. It can help you recognize what you're really looking for in life and all of that. We'll get into the actual effects more as I talk about your zodiac. Next, the other square is also with Venus direct, but this square, she's out of shadow. Okay, she's going to square with Uranus. And what's interesting is Uranus is going to be retrograde, right? So all this month of August and even July, Venus was squaring with Uranus. In the first phase, she was going into shadow, so she was losing strength. So Uranus was kind of winning this square, let's say. In the second month, in August, Venus was fully in retrograde, so she was not in the mood to contest with Uranus's whims and fancies. Okay, so again, Uranus wins that. This would be the first time where Venus is stronger and Uranus is kind of like, okay, well, I've made whatever I needed to make as a change, and what do you have to say? And what's even more interesting is that Venus also rules Taurus, where Uranus is sitting. So she can really dictate how we're going to take advantage of the changes that have already happened, the breakthroughs we have made, the realizations that have occurred in the months of July and September. Venus is now going to put that into context, put a more pleasant spin to it. Like, it doesn't have to be so drastic. We can, take it one step at a time and make the best of it. So all in all, it seems a little optimistic. And we also have an opposition. That's the only opposition. So one opposition, one conjunction. In opposition, we have Virgo again being involved, but here we're going to learn to balance the emotion side of it. So it's nice that we don't have a completely practical and logical month, which generally happens when we have so much Virgo and Libra presence, but we also have a little bit of emotion mixed in there, so we're able to kind of come back to center. Okay, fourth storyline, let's talk about the moon phases. We have a new moon in Virgo along with Mercury going direct. That's going to be on the 15th. And we also have a full moon in Libra on the 29th. And this is going to be the date that Venus squares with Uranus. So both days we have some important events occurring. So these lunar phases are not going to be boring, to say the least. We'll talk about it a lot more when we get into your zodiac. But in essence, new moons talk about new potentials and new beginnings. Meanwhile, full moons talk about completion of a cycle or pivoting into a new direction. Quite fateful. There can be external help and triggers that kind of show us and point where we should be headed next, basically. Now, the fifth storyline is that eclipse is coming about very soon. So September is sort of a drum roll phase. And at first, we might not feel it too much because we're kind of busy with the whole slumber of all the planets being retro. Then on the 4th, Venus goes direct and so on and so forth. So slowly we start waking up and getting into the mode of realizing the fateful changes that the eclipses are going to bring. Because those fated changes, they are, again, universally directed. And because so many of these outer planets are retrograde, we are, like I mentioned, we don't have that much resistance. We're more accepting of what's coming in. So this is going to be an interesting eclipse season in October, and we're starting to see what it could be about. Okay? All right, let's start with your specific reading. Okay, Libra, let's talk about all the planets that are changing directions this month. That is one of the most major things that are happening this particular month, so let's get into it. We have Jupiter in Taurus going retrograde. That falls in your 8th house of shadows, insecurities, fears, and subconscious beliefs, and the psyche in general. It's a very nice time to go for therapy or counseling if that is relevant for you. This can also indicate that you might be trying to therapize yourself, let's say, and you're finding some beliefs that have been keeping you stuck or fearful, maybe stuck in the past as well. So basically, this is responding. In this particular house, we're kind of responding to previous hurts and traumas instead of things that are happening at this moment directly. Okay, so kind of a projection, but it's a projection of fears rather than just about any projection. Okay, so it's likely around this time you're re-evaluating your beliefs here, and anything that stops you from expanding towards your goals, dreams, and aspirations. And why I say that is because we have Venus in the sign of Leo going direct as well. By the way, everything is happening on the 4th. The two things I've mentioned, they're happening on the 4th. And Venus has been in this house of Leo since quite a while, and she was retrograde from July 23rd and is now finally going direct on the 4th of September. Now, Venus rules relationships as well as finances, and it rules your zodiac Libra as well as Taurus. So there is a correlation between this Jupiter and Venus transit or the directional change that's happening on the 4th here. It seems as though both of them are moving in opposite directions. It can feel as though you finally understand what you hope to achieve in the far future, or what types of friendships and networks you want to cultivate. How do you want to come to service with humanity? How can you express yourself creatively on a more, large scale network? Perhaps you want to start a social media account to showcase your skills, even if it's like a hobby situation, it's just for fun. You might then start thinking of, oh, but what will people say, and can I commit to it? Should I commit to it? What is the point if I don't? And maybe I'm not good enough. What if others make fun of me? Or whatever such insecurities that you might feel around this time. It can also indicate that you have not thought everything through, because now Jupiter is going retrograde. It is going to give you a chance to enact those, desires that have been bubbling under the surface, and you can finally take action on those things on a more local sphere. Simultaneously, though, you're still likely to evaluate what holds you back in general. Like, creativity is not really limited to the product you create, right? It's not just about what you post on social media or something. It's more so how you dress, how you appear, how you style yourself, how you present yourself. All of these things form a creative personality. So you might be looking at, in general, what stops that vivacity that Leo represents in general. The sensual part of life as well, with Taurus in that 8th house of intimacy, and Taurus being a very sensual sign itself. If there are certain roadblocks along your way in achieving emotional, mental, physical intimacy with others, you might be looking at what exactly stops you here, okay? Another planet changing direction is Mercury. Big stuff. It's going direct on the 15th. Now, Mercury rules our communication, so emails, travel. It also rules SMS and just about anything, okay? Anything connected with communication and travel. Also rules technology, especially in the sign of Virgo. It is quite analytical and research-minded. It's also quite service oriented. So while it was retrograde, there could have been some re-evaluations going on or revisions going on connected with your sleep life and how you cultivate more peace in your mental space, especially. Also, it could have brought in some, missing information, or you might have felt a little bit aloof and kind of foggy. Like you're returning from vacation and you're like, I'm really not in the mood to get back to work, and so on. So once it goes direct, you have the alertness again, and you're able to look a little bit deeper at the finer details that you have around you, let's say with documentation processes or just in general what you're planning for your life. Now, this can also indicate that while Mercury is retrograde, the first half of September is still Mercury retrograde. So this can be talking about decluttering your space, or you might be sorting through your space and, let's say you're shifting your home in a bit and you want to see if something stays, something goes, what belongs to you, what does not belong to you, and so on. There could be surrendering of certain possessions as well, such as selling certain items that have been sitting in your basement for a very long time. It can also be about changing your routines in a way that brings you more balance and peace in your life, adding some exercise routines, or eliminating certain exercises that are not doing you any favors, perhaps exhausting you but not really showing any benefits. Or it can be that, for example, if you are someone who generally does yoga, maybe if you've tried going to the gym, then it might not have helped, and you're like, well, I give it a try, but I don't know if it is for me. And you did give it a try, but then you decide that yoga or Pilates or something else is more your speed. So now you're making that decision 15th onwards. It can also be about shifting your organization skills. So, the way that you manage or organize your work or plan your day, that can be shifting and changing to the point where either you're planning a little bit more specifically compared to before, so you're never missing information or forgetting about appointments or whatever the case is, right? Or it can be quite the opposite if you generally are someone who plans a lot, depending on, what zodiac your Mercury falls in natally. That's going to decide whether you are more of a planner or you're not so much of a planner. But regardless, there is going to be some rectification that happens in the first half of the month. And moving forward, you can then implement all of these changes. Okay, now let's talk about the aspects that are occurring this month. We have lots of trines happening, which I adore. Trines are all about harmony and breakthroughs as well as peace. It's not so much about tension, and also can be full of opportunities this month. So let's just get into it. Let's first talk about the Virgo and Taurus trines, because there are so many of them. We have a Mercury trine Jupiter. Mercury is in Virgo and Jupiter is in Taurus, and Jupiter is retrograde. This is on the 4th itself. Now, Virgo falls in that 12th house, like I mentioned, and Taurus falls in that 8th house. So your 8th and 12th are going to be talked about for a while now, okay? Now, this is more of an internal situation, and it is going to manifest more likely on a more personal level. For example, let's say you go through a little bit of a therapeutic procedure, or you do some type of grounding or cleansing, and it just brings up these particular thoughts that, and by the way, Mercury is also retrograde at this time, right? So it is more likely going to be through your intuition, and while you're doing other things, it just suddenly pops in your head and you now are on a separate train of thought. And this can bring about some openings and clarification about why you believe what you believe, or how do you react at the moment, and why is it like that? It could be that there is some conditioning from way back in the past that has made you a certain way, and you just accepted it because you were younger and you didn't have that much resistance. And now it is the moment that it comes up now, you have the chance to reevaluate and see if that fits in with your life or not. Now, because it's a trine, it indicates opportunity. You're not disheartened or disappointed. You're not crying about this necessarily, but it might make you a little bit thoughtful around this time. Now, we have the same aspect, Mercury trining with Jupiter, again later down in the month on the 25th. But the big difference here is that Mercury is no longer retrograde, and Jupiter is a lot deeper into its retrograde cycle. Now, this is going to take into account all of the things that happen between the 4th and the 25th, of course, but ultimately it is going to be about implementing all of the changes that you have already evaluated on the 4th and moving forward. And you are likely going to have a lot more clarity and movement ahead, so more progressive this one. Okay, now the 4th one, the one that happens on the 4th, it is going to be a retrospective. Meanwhile, the 25th is going to bring you some forward progress. Yes? All right. Still, it is talking about evaluating that belief system, of course. Jupiter is still retrograde, but it definitely shows more clarity within planning, organization, your efficiency, productivity, rest, and exercise, diet as well. Okay, now let's talk about another trine that Mercury makes. That's on the 30th. We have Mercury trining with Uranus. Uranus is also in Taurus and it is retrograde. So Uranus is the planet of revolutions, liberation, changes, unexpected surprises, and shocks as well. When it is retrograde, those shocks and surprises lower down, and we have a chance to absorb the changes that have already occurred. There can be certain breakthroughs in that 8th house of yours, in your psyche and subconscious. Perhaps you're doing some type of healing procedure and you're having these multiple breakthroughs in this particular month, quite healing in general. So Mercury here then indicates that you're able to really absorb that internally. It can also indicate that your mind is pretty active around this time, and you're able to understand the changes that have occurred in the past couple of months, and you are using them to your advantage as best that you can. Apart from that, this can talk about certain brilliant ideas or creative insights that you have received in the past that perhaps you have not followed through on for some or the other reason, but now again, as the aspect pops up, you can take advantage of it. We have completed the Mercury trines. Let's talk about the Sun trines. Whenever Mercury is involved, by the way, we talk about the mind and the intellect, how are we processing information. But when we talk about the Sun trines, we talk about where is clarity and more revelations coming through, okay? So on the 8th, we have the Sun trining with Jupiter, and Jupiter is retrograde in that sign of Taurus. The same houses are being activated, by the way. And we also have another trine that the Sun makes is with Uranus in Taurus, who is also retrograde, but this is on the 16th. Now, it's essentially indicating that the clarity is going to come from the inside out when the Sun is in the 12th house. It can be through abstract pictures or notions. You're generally quite visual and artistic. Also, it can be that you read a particular poetry or a story and it evokes a certain type of emotion. Or it can be a certain, tip or way of living, essentially, okay, a way of living that is revealed to you. Like you might read something such as 15 things that successful people do or peaceful people do, and you read that and you're like, yeah, that sounds very peaceful. I think I should try that out, or something of that sort. And because there is the trine aspect with the 8th house, this can be especially healing or purging for you. Any things that you have been holding back from the past, such as suppressed emotions or thoughts, certain tendencies that you hold on to that make you stagnant, that is going to be shaken up here because you have the clarity. It is important to listen to your intuition as best that you can, given whatever time you have or the opportunities that you have, but it's just going to be quite beneficial in general. Okay, we have another trine that the Sun makes, but it's targeting a different house now, and that is on the 21st when the Sun trines with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is about your ambitions and goals as well as your legacy, and now that it falls in your 4th house, it talks about your home and family or your ancestry. Pluto is retrograde here, so it is difficult to just experience whatever transformations you want because it's retro, right? We need to look inward and do the grunt work in order to experience some type of breakthrough. But that doesn't mean it's impossible, because again, 12th house talks about that intuition and allowing the spirit and the emotional side of things to carry you forward. Meanwhile, the 4th house talks about your inner self, your emotional needs, or your needs for security. Any obstacles or again conditioning that come from your ancestry or from your past in your family circumstances, it may not have been directed at you, but it can still be some, let's say, trauma that your family has experienced in the past, and you empathize with them, and perhaps through the act of empathy, you've taken it on yourself, right? If that is the case here, the Sun trine indicates that there is a breakthrough in that regard as well, because of some clarity you're experiencing. At the very least, you understand why you are the way you are. Whenever we talk about these 4th, 8th, and 12th houses, we automatically turn everything inwards. So externally, people might think you're the same person, but you only know how far you have changed and what changes exactly have been. Now, initially, be patient with yourself, because sometimes the 12th and the 8th houses are not very apparent. You might feel like nothing's happening really, but generally it is just going to be a feel-good vibe throughout the month. It can be that you're spending some nice time with your intimate people. It doesn't have to be a romantic partner, by the way. When I say intimate, whoever you have connected with on an emotional level, and it is more than just, one conversation over coffee, or yeah, you've just shared either some difficult moments in the past, so they have become like family. It can be friends, it can be your siblings as well. Whoever you share that bond with, they are coming up here. So I think you're focusing more on your personal needs and relationships rather than, the outside world, or, me and relationship and this and that, right? It's not that much of a heavy emphasis. Instead, you're looking at how can I improve my quality of living, or how can I improve my peace and joy in life in general. And I think you're cultivating more of this abundance mindset or abundance vibe. Whatever makes you feel as though you don't have enough or you can't be enough, those are the things that we're tackling in this particular month. Okay, let's talk about the conjunction. We have a Sun conjunct Mercury happening on the 6th. This is an important one, also occurring in Virgo, in that 12th house. And Mercury is retrograde at this time. So wherever the Sun goes, clarity goes, and essentially it is bringing you an alertness or clarity connected with any fogginess you're experiencing prior to this point. It can be certain missing information or missing items as well that just got lost or vanished almost. That sometimes happens, right? It's so freaky. Like you have something, you thought you kept it on the table, but then it's just not there. Or something like that. So around the 6th, you might get certain items back, or while you are decluttering, you get an idea for how you can, organize your space or your basement better so that you don't have to keep doing this declutter. And it can also indicate that you're revisiting certain memories. Some nostalgia could come around at this time. Apart from that, this can talk about you having some nice restful sleep. You get some dreams and visions. That's also possible. Or it can be the strong intuitive pull that you can't resist and you must follow through on. Okay, 12th house is very abstract. It's quite hard to explain. And everybody I've noticed, whenever they have a 12th house activation, each and every story is different. Each and every story is personal. You can't gauge from the outside. So, my examples may not land with you personally, but it still just activates something that's just so spiritual, serendipitous, a little bit emotional as well. There is a theme of surrender and acceptance connected with the 12th house too. So whenever a planet is especially retrograde in that house, you're much better able to acquire the necessary information or knowledge, awareness, all of these things. But they may not come through like a piece of paper necessarily, but rather through meditation, through sleeping, or just while you're doing your everyday stuff and it just comes to you. Okay, now let's talk about this opposition we have. This is the only opposition throughout this month, so it's generally about opportunities, but on the 19th we have a Sun opposite Neptune, and Neptune is in Pisces, and it is retrograde. Now, Virgo Pisces falls in that 12th and 6th houses. Okay, you might feel again not wanting to work here, or you're focused on other things. Perhaps lots of things are being revealed to you at this time and you're just wanting to deal with such situations. For example, you want to be resting a little bit more, you want to focus on making your home neat, or it can be about exercising a little bit more, just caring for yourself, not just having to dunk yourself back into work and, just one after the other and one after the other. It can also be that you're wanting to be more poetic or artistic around this time, and you might not have this inclination towards the regular chores and other routines and all of that. You just want to be You just want to be, essentially, okay, around this time. It is a nice one for, creativity, especially if you feel blocked. It can be this spending some time in isolation or being by yourself in some way that is going to help you out. By the way, I did not mention, but whenever you have your 12th house zodiac season, so the sun is in Virgo, that is going to be a time of reflection, surrender, decluttering, letting go. It's generally an isolating phase because the soul is essentially just taking stock of everything it has learned in the entire year, because right after Virgo season is your zodiac sign, right? So whenever the sun enters your sign, you're then going to experience this sense of rejuvenation and brightness and more light and joy as well. It's more fresh and you feel renewed in a sense. But before you can feel renewed, some things must go because they are no longer relevant to you at this current point, or they are not going to be relevant for you moving forward. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the Venus aspects. Venus is making 2 squares this month. One is on the 17th, and she squares while being in Leo with Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. So that is going to activate that 11th house and 8th house. Okay. Interesting thing to note here is that we have the sun in Virgo in this time, and Venus is still in shadow phase. She's not yet in full strength. And this is a benefic square, so it's not going to be the worst thing you're going to ever experience, right? But it can indicate that the confrontation happens for the first time here. Remember, I was mentioning that on the 4th, you might experience that your desires are on point, but you might not know exactly what that means for your bigger picture, or so what, there's no context to it because Jupiter is retrograde at this time. It could be your beliefs stopping you, but it could just be a general case of the unknown. So on the 17th would be, I think, the first time that the confrontation happens of, I think I'm going on the right track, but I have no idea where I'm going exactly. I don't have a vision that is very clear. I have to really think on it, okay? So around this time, there can be an assumption. We have the tendency to assume that whatever we want can't happen, okay? It's important to avoid that because that's not what the aspect is wanting to create. It is simply the starting point, okay? Assume the assumption that we're saying what we desire cannot happen. It's important to add right now or with the current conditions. If certain things are changing, and they must because the Jupiter is retrograde, right? If certain things are changing, then all of the things that we desire can be accommodated, but we might have to tackle it a little bit creatively or be patient with ourselves. It's a fixed square. So, things take time with fixedness because they are ultimately trying to develop a sustainable solution for the future. It's not just about right now, act on an impulse, and then that's it. They want something that's passionate and stays for the long haul. So when we talk about healing and helping others out, it's not just about I want to help someone today, but rather how can I keep helping others? How can I keep coming of service to others? Or how can I keep expressing myself to my fullest potential at this time, right? Now, the other thing, before that, I did mention the sun is in Virgo, so our focus is going to be, in your case, towards isolation, some introspection, and spirituality, also the emotional side of things. And that is quite appropriate because it's going to help Jupiter expand itself. Virgo doesn't really have any type of relationship with Leo. It's neither bad nor good. It's pretty neutral, but it is beneficial for Jupiter here. And Jupiter is the one who's needing a little bit of help around this time. So it is likely that things that you discover that hold you back or are not to the best of your capacity or the best of your desires, that is going to come to the full forefront, and you're going to work on it quite constructively. Virgo is as well as an earth sign, just like Taurus. So once again, the sustainability is going to come up. Okay, then the other square that Venus makes is with Uranus. That's on the 29th. Uranus is as well in Taurus and is retrograde. And Venus now is fully active. She's no longer in shadow phase, starting from the 29th, interestingly. And this zodiac season has changed from Virgo season to Libra season. So you are more in power around this time, and so is your ruler, Venus. So And another thing that's quite amusing to me is that Venus and Uranus have been squaring for quite some time, all throughout July and also into August, a little bit looser in August, but still they have been in a little bit of a tiff. So what Uranus has been trying to create is telling Venus, hey, break out of this cycle, break through out of this situation, independent thinking, independent being, and just don't worry about the other stuff. Don't worry about other things. But Venus has not been up for that because she was first in shadow, then she is about to go retrograde, and then she goes retrograde. So she has just not been feeling her best self, or she has other things to take care of. So she's like, yeah, okay, I will do the breakthrough thing. Not right now. Yes, I know I have to do this, but I don't really have the time for it, or don't have the energy for it, or I don't really know how. So, thanks for the encouragement, but I have no action plan. Okay. So she has not been feeling her best self, but very, very fortunately, finally, this would be the first time that they're squaring exact, and Uranus is in a relatively disadvantaged position where it's not going to introduce any new changes, but it is, through the help of Venus, going to act on the changes that have already been triggered. So if you have been internally feeling as though something has to be decluttered from my space because I feel mad, I'm surrounded by so many things that are just not necessary, that they're essentially obstructing my view or my mentality at this time, I don't have clarity and all of that, but you've just not been feeling energized or whatever the case has been, other commitments and so on. So finally, now would be the time that you're like, that's it, I'm doing this, okay? I'm not going to sit around and wait anymore. I'm not going to just stand and tolerate and this and that and compromise, etc. With squares, it's a desire for forced action. Like, this must happen. There is no compromise and middle ground and all of that. Not in every square, at least. It is still a fixed square, though, so it is going to require some breaking out of a certain pattern. Okay, it can't be a middle ground situation. Maybe in the case of mutable squares or cardinal squares, but not with fixed. So yes, certain commitments you might have that may need to fall through, so that you can follow through on some other commitments that are more important for you at this time. Okay, in general, there's a social vibe going on here. Leo is quite extroverted and quite social, so I think you're being supported here with regards to making new friends, expanding your network, following up on your hopes, dreams, and aspirations, the way you want to come to service to humanity, or what do you want to put out there in the world, which is perhaps going to ignite other people, maybe motivate them, inspire them, and so on. It might seem radical to you because you're stepping outside of your comfort zone, but it is also going to feel very profound and liberating. Some small things to mention. Now, the sun moves into Libra on the 23rd. That is going to be the autumnal equinox. And beyond this point, we're going to be more focused on surrendering. It's the wisdom phase for all zodiacs. For you, of course, it's going to be your zodiac season. And it can be a little bit of a turning point in what you're focusing on moving forward. Perhaps previously, we're looking at what the world wants, what the external results are, productivity, going out there, socializing more, connecting with others, beliefs, and all of that. But now, moving ahead, you're going to focus more on what your personal desires are, what finances are doing, what your self-worth is like. It can be your mentality, mindset, the way that you're speaking, writing. It can be about your home and family as well, your creativity, your routines in general, and so on. Okay, so we're surrendering certain ideologies or resistances, and we're just allowing ourselves to experience our kind of personal lives more fully around this time. Okay, moving ahead. Now, also another thing to note is that throughout the month we have a drum roll for eclipses. In October, we are going to have 2 eclipses, so they are not here yet, okay? We don't have to worry about it so much, but it is important to note what events are occurring or what the trend is overall throughout the month, because it can give you some pieces of information of what needs to be worked on, because those are the things that eclipses are going to bring about as fateful changes. For example, we have a Taurus eclipse, and Jupiter is retrograde, Uranus is retrograde, so we are more in that accepting position whenever any planet is retro. We are more sensing the universal nudges and the internal cues. So whenever there are fateful changes in that area, we're then going to be more accepting of those things. i.e. there's not that much resistance. This can manifest as sudden surprising events that unlock or certain, blocked memories, for example, right? So it's important to note what's coming up here. Don't ignore the cues. They can be very useful in how you cope with the eclipses coming soon. Okay, finally, let's talk about the moon phases. We have a new moon occurring on the 15th. This is going to be in the sign of Virgo. It's the same day that Mercury in Virgo goes direct. And this moon is trining with Uranus in Taurus, and Uranus is retrograde, like I was mentioning. So once again, that 8th and 12th houses come up to the surface. So any manifestations you want to do connected with surrendering, letting go, trusting the unknown, just inspiring spiritual energies to just come into your life, perhaps cleansing or helping others out, or any magical or anything that you're involved in, essentially, that can be beneficial. It can also be very nice for like soothing influences, perhaps clarity of mind and more organization that you want to be doing. There can be an idea, an aha moment that comes about here. Generally, new moons are all about new potential and new beginnings. They may not be as loud as full moons. Okay, generally they are more subdued, but they can be sensed quite obviously on a more personal level, especially because it falls in that 12th house for you. We have a full moon in Aries. The sun is going to be in Libra. The moon is in Aries. And this is occurring on the 29th in parallel to the Venus squaring with Uranus. Now, the full moon in Aries is going to be at a trine aspect with Venus and Leo. It's a fire trine. So that's going to be, not exactly, okay, it's not at an exact aspect, but it is a, sign-based modality, element-based trine. So that is going to help you out with, having more passion in life, connecting with your partner, if you have one, on a more passionate level, or having a fun conversation, and you're meeting with one another. Perhaps you have a long distance relationship, and now this is a time that perhaps there are some meeting arrangements being made. This can also talk about being able to meet someone on a friendly setting. So perhaps you go to a social event and that's where you make a new connection. Or it can even be that you have encountered someone in the past, but you didn't know whether you would get along, or for some other reason, you just did not have the chance to get to know each other a little bit deeply. And this would be a time that you're like, let me just step outside of my bounds and not just date a particular type. Let me open up and see what's out there. Maybe, someone unexpected is more my speed, or someone who I can resonate with at this point in life. Because keep in mind that with Venus, with the retro and everything, you yourself have been changing. Leo represents the ego and also our passions and desires, okay? And because Venus rules you, all of this is going to affect you on a more personal level. The desires and the wants you have, the needs that you have connected with relationships as well, are changing and shifting. So this full moon can help you very clearly recognize this. And as I mentioned, Venus is going to be out of shadow on this particular day. So it's clearer than ever about what you're wanting right now. Also a nice day for manifestation, but full moons are more about completion and pivot. So something that has been ongoing, perhaps a relationship pattern in the past 6 months, things got to switch up. There may be some, desire to reignite the relationship, bring in more spark and fun and passion as well. It's a nice day for all of that. And if you're wanting to manifest someone new in your life, that's also possible, but it might involve letting go of a certain behavior or certain habit, or it can be a certain outlook. For example, if you're looking for a certain type of person, that may not apply anymore because you are breaking out of your shell, so can the partnership choices you make can also be changing moving forward. So it's important to keep an open mind, but it's also important to kind of keep going, not give up. And full moons can absolutely bring in that type of clarity and show you what exactly needs to go, if it needs to go, or is what cycle is being completed for you at this time. You can even decide that I don't want to date right now. I always thought that I have to have a relationship, but maybe not. Let me try this, being independent and going out there and just experiencing what's out there and what's fun. And that itself can bring towards you lots of personal clarity and empowerment, but also unexpected encounters down the line in different settings. So that's what I have for you. Thank you for being here. I really hope you enjoyed and that the messages help you out throughout the month. Stay tuned for the tarot reading as well. I will be uploading them soon. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified whenever that's up. And if you enjoyed the reading, please do like and comment your thoughts if you have any. It will be really lovely to hear back from you, and it really helps the channel grow as well. I will see you some other time. Until then, take care. Bye.